Say that again. Good evening. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Lucas Sykes, and I am the resident director of Newman Hall.
Oh, and I'm Father Daniel. I'm an assistant chaplain of Newman.
Excellent. So tonight we're going to talk about mercy, justice, and Les Mis. So before we get started, we want to invite you to continue to eat. If you would like seconds, thirds, please feel free to head back there. You don't need to feel awkward about standing up in the middle of the talk. Please enjoy the pizza. It is free, just like our wisdom. Excellent. Great. So why are we doing this? So Father Daniel and I were on the pilgrimage this September to see Pope Francis in Philadelphia. Raise your hand if you were there. Oh, wow, good chunk of people. Anyways, so either on the way there, on the way back, at some point we watched Les Mis on the bus, and Father Daniel and I sat somewhere near each other, sang off key at each other a little bit, and had the idea to incorporate Les Mis and its profound themes of mercy and justice into our kind of campus-wide celebration of the Jubilee Year of Mercy. Do you want to explain what the Jubilee Year of Mercy is?
It's a year that Pope Francis has designated to celebrate mercy in a more powerful way. That's all. That's all I'm going to say about that.
So we thought that this would be a really fun way to engage the question of mercy and justice with a really popular musical, book, and some really powerful themes that we both love. So that's what we'll be discussing.
And the pizza helped get that theme across because we had an opportunity to share mercy to those who came in, got pizza, and left. So
where I would have preferred to show them justice and rain my fury down upon them. Father Daniel, stop me.
All right. So for our creative, thought-provoking introduction, now that we're done rambling for a little bit, actually we're just getting started, we're going to read back and forth two songs from Les Mis that are designed to parallel each other and do so perfectly. They are Valjean's soliloquy and Javert's suicide. And the significance of this is that both of these men have just received mercy. Right? Javert has received mercy from Valjean. Valjean, at the beginning, has received mercy from the bishop. And so it's an opportunity to look at two men and how they respond differently to mercy. Yeah, here's in front. What have I done, sweet Jesus, what have I done? Become a thief in the night, become a dog on the run? And have I fallen so far, and is the hour so late, that nothing remains but the cry of my hate, the cries in the dark that nobody hears, here where I stand at the turning of the years?
Who is this man? What sort of devil is he, to have me caught in a trap and choose to let me go free? It was his hour at last, put a seal on my fate, wipe out the past and wash me clean off the slate. All it would take was a flick of his knife. Vengeance was his, and he gave me back my life.
If there's another way to go, I missed it 20 long years ago. My life was a war that could never be won. They gave me a number and murdered Valjean when they chained me and left me for dead, just for stealing a mouthful of bread.
Damned if I'll live in the debt of a thief. Damned if I'll yield at the end of the chase. I am the law, and the law is not mocked. I'll spit his pity right back in his face. There is nothing on earth that we share. It is either Valjean or Javert.
Yet why did I allow that man to touch my soul and teach me love? He treated me like any other. He gave me his trust. He called me brother. My life he claims for God above. Can such things be? For I had come to hate the world, this world that always hated me.
How can I now allow this man to hold dominion over me? This desperate man whom I have hunted, he gave me my life, he gave me freedom. I should have perished by his hand. It was his right. It was my right to die as well. Instead I live, but live in hell.
Take an eye for an eye. Turn your heart into stone. This is all I have lived for. This is all I have known.
And my thoughts fly apart. Can this man be believed? Shall his sins be forgiven? Shall his crimes be reprieved?
One word from him and I'd be back, beneath the lash upon the rack. Instead he offers me my freedom. I feel my shame inside me like a knife.
And must I now begin to doubt, who never doubted all these years? My heart is stone and still it trembles. The world I have known is lost in shadow.
He told me that I have a soul. How does he know? What spirit comes to move my life? Is there another way to go?
Is he from heaven or from hell? And does he know that granting me my life today, this man has killed me even so?
I am reaching, but I fall.
I am reaching, but I fall.
And the night is closing in.
And the stars are black and cold.
And I stare into the void.
As I stare into the void.
To the whirlpool of my sin.
Of a world that cannot hold.
I'll escape now from the world.
I'll escape now from the world.
From the world of Jean Valjean.
From the world of Jean Valjean.
Jean Valjean is nothing now.
There is nowhere I can turn.
Another story must begin.
There is no way to go on. Okay. Oh, thank you. So, one of my reflections in this was about how similar Valjean and Javert's paths were. Both did commit crimes or offenses against others or against themselves. And it kind of reminded me of Peter and Judas and how they both committed offenses to Christ. So in the gospel, both Peter and Judas sin. They deny Christ. Judas betrays Christ by handing him over, by giving him up. And Peter denies Christ 3 times, each time denying that he was a follower, that he was a friend of Christ. So both commit a pretty grave and intense sin, and it ends up consuming both of them. Both of them are surrounded, like these two, by their sin, overwhelmed by the offenses they committed, by what they had done, confused, and one of them chose repentance, chose to acknowledge and act on Christ's mercy, and the other gave into despair. So in the gospel, Peter comes to the Lord, repents, accepts his mercy, reminding Christ, Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I love you. And Judas instead gives into despair, like Javert commits suicide himself. So I thought that was a pretty interesting parallel to the gospel, to that same kind of time period where both denied, both refused the love of Christ, and both took very drastically different approaches to encounter God's mercy.
So on that notion of parallels to the gospel, and specifically to the Passion, on Holy Thursday, a few of us who were around here over break watched the Passion of the Christ. And, you know, how many of you have seen Passion of the Christ? Most of us? Okay, maybe a few not. But, you know, it's one of those movies that every time you watch it, something different can kind of jump out at you. And a lot of things did, but one of the things that jumped out at me this time was as Jesus is being nailed to the cross, and as the nails are being driven in, and he prays, Father, forgive them. And the camera cuts to John, and the look of absolute shock and disillusionment and scandal on his face as Jesus is praying for forgiveness for those who are nailing him to a cross as the nails are being driven in is profound to me. Because I think when we're faced with the sight of people suffering under injustice, there's something right and true and beautiful about the fact that our hearts are yearning for justice at that moment. But I think that moment for me challenged me to really go back to this question, which is kind of, for me, is kind of the focal point of this talk, which is, can my notion of justice be fulfilled in mercy? Can my notion of justice really be fulfilled in mercy? And it's interesting because the movie, or the story, even more generally, creates a couple of situations that invite us to think about that parallel and that tension. Because on one hand, you have some instances where it's clear that to show mercy is justice, like look down, right? And look down, it's a cry for mercy. But it's a cry for mercy. In fact, it's even one of the lines, right? Show mercy to your fellow man, right? But it's a cry for mercy that is clearly calling for justice at the same time. That clearly in that situation, to show mercy is to show justice. And then furthermore, at the end, towards the end, just before Javert's suicide, when he encounters Valjean, and Valjean's calling for him to show mercy to Marius, who's the soldier that he's trying to save. And Javert says, the man of mercy comes again and talks of justice. And so really it creates situations that are different from the situations that we usually think of these terms in, that at least plant the seed of getting us to think about the notion of how mercy really can fulfill justice. So, if we're going to explore that idea of can our notion of justice be fulfilled in mercy, what are people's understandings of justice that they have? Sorry?
Fulfilling the law.
Okay. Legalistic, fulfilling the law. Good. What else? You get what you deserve. Sorry, just like when people say exactly what I want them to say. Caesar?
Balance of right and wrong.
Balance of right and wrong. Okay. Okay. Daniel.
I just think of the court system.
The court system?
Yeah.
Okay, so going back again to the law, to fulfilling the law. Yeah. Okay, courts, trial, fair trial. Okay.
I was thinking religious law, 10 Commandments.
You were thinking religious law, so yeah, they're both, yeah.
Civil law.
Civil law, religious law, both in. Okay. So, how many of you knew, are there any others before I move on? Yeah, Victoria.
Revenge is usually tied up with justice.
Matt, where you at? Matt posted this thing on my Facebook wall today because he was so excited for the movie, or for the talk, about, what was the quote from Pope Francis?
I don't remember.
You can tell that Matt was not a plant in our talk.
It was, because that's a big thing, but it was something about,
Love is the opposite of justice, or the opposite of. Yeah, I think it was the opposite of justice. Or
Without-
revenge, maybe.
without love, justice becomes just revenge, or something like that. So, okay, good. So how many of you knew that justice is a virtue, is one of the cardinal virtues? Boom, good, proud of you. All right. So, the traditional definition of justice is to give to each its due. Where's the thingamajig that helps me erase the things that I'd write that I didn't mean to write? Give to each its due. Okay? All right. That word due is important. Okay? So give to each its due, which begins with God, by the way. The virtue of justice actually begins by first giving God his due. Right? And then giving to others their due. Now, as one of the definitions we heard explained, often we think of it as simply giving others what they deserve. And so, however, there's the idea of giving to each their due. It goes a little deeper. So this giving to others only what they deserve, we're going to call a cold, hard, and I'm going to throw in the word incomplete, or you could even say insufficient justice. because this idea of focusing on giving others what they deserve does not actually fulfill the intention of what justice is when we talk about giving others their due. Because when we talk about giving others their due, we have to realize that there's two ways in which that's understood. That there's giving each their due according to their nature, as well as giving each their due according to their actions. So we're going to put mercy is capable of fulfilling this justice. Okay, so we're going to put mercy over here. We're going to put cold, hard, incomplete justice over here. Okay, because it's able to give each what is their due according to their nature. Giving others what they deserve according to their actions is, only focuses on actions. Doesn't go to that deeper level of nature. And so because of that, the key difference, and this, for me this is such a profound theme in Les Mis, is that mercy, what sets mercy apart is that mercy sees the person. This cold, hard, incomplete notion of justice only sees their actions, their crimes, their sins. But the person is so much more, right? This dynamic is something that we see coming across, especially in a profound way in Who Am I, right? As he's singing, Who Am I, right? And he's a man who's already experienced mercy, and he's been given that new beginning, like we heard in the beginning with his soliloquy. He saw mercy as an opportunity to begin again, right? And so he's received that gift. He's returned to the reality that he is not just 24601, which was the number given to him because of his crimes, because of his actions, right? But he is Jean Valjean. He's begun, because of the mercy the bishop has shown him, he's begun to see his own nature, to see his own person. However, now he's faced with a situation where this other man is going to suffer because of his actions. And he realizes the need to fulfill justice. He realizes the need to take responsibility for his actions, to own up to his identity, quote unquote, as 24601. And it's interesting that he's always in this dynamic, right, of being baffled by the mercy that he has received. And all the way to the very end, right? Even at the very end, I was really moved by this when we watched the movie Thursday night, because I had actually forgotten about it. That at the end of the movie, he comes back and sings part of Who Am I again, when he's talking to Marius, and he ends on the question, Who am I? And Marius answers, You're Jean Valjean, right? Marius probably doesn't even know the number 24601. He just heard the story of the crimes, but he knows that the person is someone more. Did you want to say your other thought about him at the end there?
Yeah. So with this kind of theme, well, okay, I'll ask this question. Why is what we deserve insufficient? What do we deserve? What does that mean? Zero? Nothing? Okay. We could deserve nothing. Matt, what do we deserve?
Whose decision is that? Who gets to decide what we deserve?
Javert.
Where are we going with this line of questioning?
Vera. I'll skip you.
We're going to Vera, okay.
We don't deserve anything because we all know something is wrong, so we can't anyone be justified for anything that's unjust because we all.
Okay, yes, that's kind of where I was going in that line of questioning. Whether man to man, what we deserve from God, the answer is nothing, or the answer could be death. The wages of sin is death. Sounds pretty harsh, sounds pretty true as well. So when yes, because as Vera said, we've all fallen short of Christ. We've all sinned against God. We've all directly said no to God, and those are our sins, and those are our greatest sins when we say those directly and with intention against God. And what do we deserve after doing that? Well, the wages of sin is death, says St. Paul. So that's why it's important. That's why we're talking about beyond our actions, the nature, the person, looking at what we are due. So one of the things that moved me when I was watching the movie again and I was reflecting on is that just like our actions can make us fall short of the glory of God, but there's nothing that we can do in our actions to repair that. We can be good people. We can try our best to live a good life, a moral life. But there's nothing that we can do, I, Lucas Sykes, can do to earn back my place in heaven, to earn God's mercy myself. Mercy is a gift from God, and it is freely given. Despite the fact that I deserve death for my sins, God chooses freely, without needing to extend his mercy, to give me my due because of my nature, because of my personhood. So one of the things that I loved from the movie is that here's Jean Valjean, and for the first few minutes, he's like a war-torn, like prison bird, it's raining, and this boat is so heavy, It really is heavy. I mean, it looks like a bad job. So here he is, and then in the first 5 minutes, we're already singing Valjean's soliloquy, and he has this huge conversion, which he says later, that's when I gave my life to God, this I know. And he goes on to live this just totally morally upright life, where he becomes the mayor, where he takes care of an entire village. He directly supervises factory workers. Then later he becomes a father. He takes in a child that he's never met before from a woman that he barely knows, who he met over the course of a few days as she was dying. He takes in this child and raises her as his own. So, to anyone's view, he's a pretty stellar guy. He's a pretty awesome guy, right? He did a lot of good things. For 5 minutes, it's like, oh, he's dirty. Oh, he was in jail. And then he ends up being like the most epic character and the most virtuous man. And still, at the end of the movie, he's dying. And he's in this convent, and he's surrounded by these candles, and he's still begging God for mercy. Why would this man who looks so good to us, who appears moral and virtuous, and truly has done sacrificial, moral, and just things in his life, be begging God for mercy? Because he knows that no matter his sins, no matter his actions of virtue, there's nothing he can do to push himself into God's grace. That at the end of the day, no matter our actions, mercy is a gift that's being given from God freely to us. So still, and that's why we are always asking God for his mercy, no matter what our state of sin, no matter how virtuous or how good we feel about what we're doing, we are all dependent on God's mercy, and Valjean knows that towards the end of his life.
Yeah, that is one of the most profound things, is that very early in the story, you see this man who really has committed a very minor crime, receiving mercy in a profound way. But what's so profound about it is not just the mercy that he receives, but the way that mercy changes him. The way that he then goes on to be a man who shows mercy to others, who spends the rest of his life seeing the person in their suffering and seeing not just what they deserve, in fact, not caring about what they deserve, but he's able to see, and this is the next point, not just what they deserve, but what they need. And that's another key difference between mercy and the cold, hard notion of justice, is that mercy gives others not just what they deserve. In fact, often it'll ignore what we deserve, right? It gives what we need. And it's able to do that because it's able to see the person.
So now we'll talk a little bit about Javert and his idea of justice. We say his idea or his cold-hearted or cold, hard, incomplete idea of justice, because while he sees himself as a law and sees himself as justice, we would argue that his idea of justice is incomplete. So he kind of shares that in the song Stars. He goes out one night before, he's pledging to God outdoors that he's going to stop at nothing to find Valjean and to make sure that justice is ensured and that he gets this prisoner who broke parole and brings him back. And he's looking at the stars and he's saying how ordered they are in the sky. Everything fits the way it should. And he says, the stars, they know their course and their aim. Nothing stops a star from what it should be or what it is in the sky. So Javert sees these actions and he knows what the consequences are. He knows what this person deserves. And he will stop at nothing. He will not break that course until it is ensured. And this is his idea of justice throughout the movie, and then especially towards the end, you start to see him break. You start to see how that worldview doesn't hold. It can't sustain itself because God created our world.
Right. And the interesting thing is as Lucas was kind of getting at, there's definitely some element of goodness in how Javert views this, because he sees this order and design, right? He sees some glimpse and has some intention of wanting to do God's will. And so, because the importance of God's design is actually very important here, because when we begin with this view that giving each their due according to their nature, seeing their person, not just their actions and what we think they deserve, then we realize that we have to think about our nature. What has God made us for? What is it that we need? Why is it that we need mercy? We need mercy because mercy restores us to communion. Think about prisoners living separated from society. Mercy is meant to restore our communion, because this is what we were made for. The most basic things that the human person was made for boil down to two things: communion with God and communion with one another, right? And so by our sins, we have rejected God, and so to a degree, we don't deserve that communion because we chose to turn away from it, right? But God sees us and knows that He made us for communion, and His love for us pours out such that He wants to give us what we need. He knows that we need mercy to be restored to communion, to be restored to what we were made for, right? And so this notion of how mercy fulfills justice, it helps us to begin to see that justice is about restoring God's design. It's about putting things back. I circle everything on this side, because everything on this side I want you to remember. It's about putting things back in order the way that it's meant to be, right? One of the simplest ways that I talk about how we live the virtue of justice, how do we focus on giving each their due in our lives? We put our priorities back in order, right? That we give God everything first, and then we give so God comes first, others second, our own self-interest last, right? And so it's about restoring God's design. So in order for justice to be complete, it has to begin from a perspective of divine wisdom, of what did God make us for. We see in particular, again, another insight from the Passion, either the passion from the gospel itself, or it's also powerful in the movie too, but is the famous question of Pontius Pilate, what is truth? And there's on one hand an apparent disregard for truth, but on the other hand, I think a kind of yearning. Like he does want to know, but he doesn't know. And that's the thing, is that justice without truth will always limp. And that is what is the curse, if you will, that Pilate is living with, right? That he's in a position where he's responsible for justice, but he doesn't have truth. He doesn't know what truth is. How can you fulfill justice without truth? And so because we begin from God's design that we're all made for communion, and we need God's mercy to receive that communion, then we are able to show mercy in the right way. How do we get from here to here?
I just start talking.
Okay.
We are transitioning, so we're talking about what mercy is, what justice is. Now we're going to talk about how it practically applies, how it takes what Father Daniel and I call a cycle of mercy, how you enter into that cycle of mercy. So I think my favorite part about Les Mis is, I think it's the first 5 minutes. I just love it. I could watch that over and over again. Up through Valjean's soliloquy. It's like him in prison, him getting out, him encountering the bishop, being exposed to forgiveness and mercy, and having a major conversion. Whoa, 5 minutes. It's like a movie in its own. It's like, I don't know, it's like Up. It's like first 5 minutes. It just makes me cry, right? Anyways, wait, first of all, raise your hand if you've never seen Les Mis. I know that there are people here, and that's okay. That's okay. Raise it high. Higher. Okay, great. Okay, excellent. This is great. And then, so everyone else has seen Les Mis. Has anyone seen it live? Has anyone seen it live on Broadway? Where did you see it live?
London.
What? Is anyone planning and they want to take me with them?
Okay, great. Has anyone read the book? No kidding. Abridged. Okay, yeah, because I hear the actual book is 1,400 pages. Yeah. Anyways, so I love the encounter with the bishop because that little story at the beginning is what spirals the rest of this whole adventure, this whole story of mercy and justice. Valjean and the many different people that he's connected to and who have intertwining stories throughout his entire life, which is awesome. So in the story, he is out cold. No one will give him work because he went to prison. And he ends up encountering the bishop of a town who invites him in to warm up, to have a meal, wants to treat him with the utmost dignity and love, serves him a meal on his finest gold-plated plates, silverware, and they have like a fantastic meal. And then in the night, he goes in and he steals the plates, the gold, the silverware, the everything. He goes off. Well, Valjean, he's never gotten away with a thing in his entire life. The next day he gets caught, and the police bring him back to the bishop, and they're like, look, he stole these things. And the bishop says, oh, no, I gave it to him, because he was quick thinking, thought of that on the spot. Like, no, we're good. In fact, I forgot to give you these two. And he takes these two big candles, and we're watching it like, thanks, Bishop. Yeah, candles. They're actually gold candles. And that's okay. And actually prized family heirlooms of his. So not only does he give what he had originally stole, he ends up giving to Valjean in abundance. He says, okay, take that, and take this too. Make sure it's heavy too, when you carry all this gold away. And he gives to him in abundance, and it confounds Valjean. He's baffled by this. How can he do this when he treated me like a king and I stole everything of his, ran away in the night, and here he is treating me with the utmost love and respect and giving me even more than I had stolen from him, just as God does. And it's amazing because this encounter is what kind of sparks his conversion and what begins the cycle. Just like in our lives, in the spiritual life, all mercy begins with the forgiveness that we were shown at the beginning of our stories. And we all have the same origin to that story, and that is Christ on the cross. And Christ is the initiator of our life of mercy and justice. He is the initiator of mercy and forgiveness. He, without blame, without sin, like the bishop is portrayed in the story, gives to us in abundance, gives us everything that we need, and asks us to follow him, to be upright, to love. And it starts everything. So we're going to talk about this.
So the cycle that we see shown in Les Mis and in life is, what is it again? Maybe I should go over there. Let me go over there. Wait, can I do this? Can I use this side? Oh, yeah. See how that worked? All right. Is first, you receive. What did I miss? Okay.
Do we do
Receive I before E except after C. Okay. Receive, I honestly wasn't sure. Receive mercy. First we receive mercy because Christ is the initiator. And we're forgiven. With that forgiveness comes healing. Why do I put forgiveness first before healing? The two go hand in hand. But there's a key difference that I see. And that's that forgiveness, on the part of the giver, first of all, is a choice. Healing is a process. But the two go hand in hand. We have to remember that. Where's the rest of the cycle? Oh, yeah. So then, by what we have received, by that healing, we grow towards freedom. We are now free. So we are then free. And with that freedom, then we can go on, and we are then free to forgive others. Now, when someone has hurt us, it's not easy to forgive them. Why? Because they've hurt us. I mean, it sounds like silly and stubborn, but it's true, right? Because there's a wound there. That wound needs to be healed. That healing, again, I remind you, healing is a process. Forgiveness is a choice. So it begins when we make the choice to forgive. But because that process of healing has to continue, there are going to be things that happen that rip that wound back open like a scab. And we have to renew the choice to forgive every time. That's an important part of the process. But we're free to do that because of the forgiveness and healing that we receive from Christ. And with that, then we participate in their healing by the forgiveness that we show them. And then they are able to give mercy. And the cycle goes on and on and on. The amazing thing about this dynamic between the choice of forgiveness and the process of healing is that what we realize, especially when we reflect on the Paschal mystery, on Christ's death and resurrection, is when we're at the cross, we realize God's choice is already made. He's chosen. It's done. He's forgiving us. We are forgiven. Right? But the process of us being healed, receiving that process goes on. We see that in a particular way in the gospel when he's speaking to Peter, right? And 3 times, no, Peter, look at me. Do you love me? No, seriously. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. We're constantly engaged in that process of living and receiving that forgiveness. But his choice is already made. Okay. And it's made because he sees and knows and loves us. And before we go into the last section, I just wanted to comment and that one of the most profound lines for me in the soliloquy is, I always get chills. You might have even heard it when I was reading. I always get chills when it gets to it, when he says, he told me I have a soul. How does he know? It's that moment when he realizes that the bishop sees his nature and sees the person more profoundly than he sees himself. And it reminds me of that quote from St. John Paul II, one of my favorites. I quote it all the time. You are not the sum total of your weaknesses and failures. You are the sum total of the Father's love for you and your real capacity to become an image of his Son, Jesus Christ. We're not defined by our actions and our crimes. But God's mercy helps us to begin to see ourselves as persons that God chose to die on a cross for, and to rise again that we may have new life. So, because we then can see that receiving this mercy brings freedom, then that takes us to the last song we're going to discuss, which is my personal favorite. One day more. Okay, I'm going to go. Because ultimately, this dynamic of our hope being in mercy is so strong in that song. Because I see that song as all about a song, a beautiful, profound reflection of hope. What is it that we hope for, that we look forward to from this one day more? What have we placed our hope in? We see Marius, Cosette, and Eponine, right? All placing their hope in a romantic love that they expect to fulfill them. Marius and Cosette, that hope is being fulfilled, but they're being pulled apart. Whatever is going to happen. And Eponine's just like, no, they taught me about emotional chastity. No. That's right, I said it.
That wasn't in our outline.
That was not in the outline. And the innkeeper and his wife placed their hope in selfish gain, right? And I don't know how to say his name. Enhoros and
Cyprian?
He's just laughing.
Cyprian, say it out loud. Oh.
I don't know the name. I can read it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
That guy and Javert are two sides of the same coin. They place their hope, what are they looking forward to from next day more? This self-imposed notion of justice, which is often this self-imposed cold, hard justice. Two sides of the same coin. And then you have Valjean, who's placed his hope simply in living the freedom that he's found in mercy. So be like Valjean. Is that our conclusion? Yes, I think so.